We appreciate the listeners who've already signed up for our channel, and we invite new ones to sign up for free as well.
It's great to be here with everyone.
So today, we are tackling a giant.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't use that word lightly. We're talking about Gustav Mahler.
Mm-hmm.
And, usually when you read a biography of a composer, it's a very linear thing. Born here, wrote this, conducted that, died there. It's a timeline.
Right. It's just a set of data points, strictly chronological. And while that's useful, it doesn't really tell you who the person was.
Exactly. But the material we're diving into today just throws that timeline out the window. We are not looking at the chronology of Mahler. We're trying to understand the psychology of Mahler.
Yeah.
We're exploring the man who said, a symphony must be like the world. It must contain everything. And today's question is, well, what happens when everything includes an unbearable amount of pain?
That is the central question. And our guide for this is a really fascinating analysis from the historian Professor Reuven Feingold from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He's synthesized a very specific psychoanalytic view on Mahler.
And that view comes from one particular book, doesn't it? We always want to ground these deep dives in the source.
It does. We are looking at a book called Gustav Mahler, Corazon Angustiado.
Which means?
Gustav Mahler, An Anguished Heart. It was published in 2010 by Arnaldo Lieberman. And the key thing here is that Lieberman is not just a musicologist, he's also a psychoanalyst.
Okay, so that explains why we're skipping the dates and going straight for the neuroses. This isn't just about the notes on the page.
Not at all. It's about the mind that arranged them. Lieberman, he isn't interested in the exact date Mahler wrote the Titan Symphony. He wants to know why he wrote it.
It's a case study.
It's a case study, exactly. He uses what he calls a literary axis. He's hunting for the recurring themes, the doubt, the explosive temper, the humor that define Mahler no matter what year it was.
That sounds incredible, but also a little risky for a biographer.
Yeah.
If you take away the timeline, what do you anchor the story in? How does this not just become a list of personality traits?
He anchors it in relationships, and he does that by diving into primary sources. Letters, specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Mahler was a compulsive letter writer, and the real treasure trove, the Holy Grail, are the letters he wrote to his wife, Alma.
Alma Mahler.
Right.
Who's a whole complex figure in her own right.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to remember the dynamic. She was 20 years younger than him, the most beautiful girl in Vienna.
Right.
Through these letters, Mahler stops being the great conductor, this austere figure on a podium. He becomes a man who is deeply insecure, passionately in love, and just terrified of losing it all.
It makes him human. It pulls him off the pedestal.
It makes him tangible. You see a man wrestling with these huge intellectual shifts of the 19th century, philosophy, psychology, social upheaval. He wasn't on the sidelines. He was right in the middle of it, trying to solve the riddle of existence with pen and paper.
So if Lieberman is putting Mahler on the analyst's couch, what's the diagnosis? What does he say about the music that comes from this anguished heart?
There's one quote from Lieberman that I think just sums up this entire analysis. He says, Mahler's music is the image of a man who screams, who despairs, who rejoices, in short, who lives.
A man who screams.
Yeah.
That's powerful. It suggests the music isn't just art, it's a biological need, a kind of release valve.
Exactly. It's visceral. But you have to contextualize that scream. He wasn't screaming in a vacuum. He was screaming in Vienna.
Let's talk about that, because early 20th century Vienna, it conjures up images of waltzes and coffee houses, a very polished, polite society.
But it was a pressure cooker. It was the intellectual capital of the world. Mahler is walking the same streets as Thomas Mann, Gustav Klimt, the poet Rilke.
Sigmund Freud.
He's breathing the same air as Sigmund Freud. It's this incredible constellation of geniuses, all in one city.
And Arnold Schoenberg.
Yes, and this is where the analysis gets very sharp. The source material draws this contrast between Mahler and Schoenberg that really shines a light on the so-called Jewish question in Vienna.
That part really surprised me. We tend to just lump them together, great Jewish composers in Vienna. But their experiences were quite different.
Very different, and a lot of that is down to timing and the rapid escalation of anti-Semitism. There's a story in the sources about Schoenberg that is just gut-wrenching. It's from 1921, so a decade after Mahler's death, but it shows the world Mahler was living on the edge of.
What happened?
So Schoenberg tried to take a vacation in Matzee near Salzburg, just wanted some peace and quiet to compose, but when he gets there, he's denied a room.
Not because they were full.
No, explicitly because he was a Jew.
Oh, that's just a profound humiliation. For a man of his stature to be told your genius doesn't matter.
And it broke something in him. He wrote that he was just incapable of recovering his peace of mind. But listen to what he wrote to the painter Kandinsky. He said, "Finally, this year I have learned a lesson I will never forget. I am neither German nor European. I am just a Jew."
That's the moment. The dream of assimilation is just dead.
It changed everything for him. By 1933, he formally returns to Judaism and dedicates himself to saving Jews from the Nazis. Now, bring that back to Mahler. He died in 1911, so he missed the worst of that overt rejection.
Right.
But Lieberman argues that Mahler's entire life was lived in the shadow of that rejection.
So even if he wasn't literally kicked out of a hotel, he felt that same sentence hanging over his head.
Precisely. The source uses a concept from the essayist Santiago Kovadlov called the tragic man.
Okay.
And the definition is brilliant. Tragic is the man who, feeling innocent, knows he is sentenced.
Feeling innocent, but knows he is sentenced.
Wow. That perfectly explains the anxiety. You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, even though you've done nothing wrong. It's the desert experience, this feeling of being an intruder in the German culture he loved so much. And this existential homelessness drives him straight towards spirituality.
But not necessarily religion, right? Because when you listen to the Resurrection Symphony, it sounds incredibly religious, but was he, churchgoer?
Not in the traditional sense, no. He wasn't following dogma. But he was obsessed with the divine. And Lieberman makes a fascinating comparison here. He compares Mahler's God to Franz Kafka's God.
That is not a comforting comparison. Kafka's God is silent, distant, unreachable.
That's the point. Mahler's God is a silent recipient of lament. Mahler is screaming, composing these massive works, and he's getting no clear answer back.
There's a line from one of his letters that just jumped out at me. He wrote, "But if man suffers in silence, a God gave me the gift to express my pain."
That's it. That is the core of Mahler's existence. The silence of the universe is unbearable, so he fills it with music. He wrote to Max Marschak in 1896 that music begins exactly where words fail.
If you could say it, he wouldn't need to write it.
Exactly. For Mahler, music is the portal to the other world. It's the only way to breach the wall.
So the symphony isn't just entertainment. It's a tool. It's an attempt to force a connection with the absolute, like building a Tower of Babel, but with sound.
And Lieberman points directly to the Eighth Symphony, the Symphony of 1000, that Veni Creator Spiritus section. That is Mahler trying to neutralize the silence. He is storming the gates of heaven with 1,000 performers. It's a desperate plea.
But does he ever get an answer? Does he find that peace?
And that's the tragedy. Lieberman argues that the absolute, it reveals itself to Mahler, but it always remains just out of reach. It's the paradise lost of the existentialists. He's like Kafka or Kierkegaard. He can see the promised land, but he can't enter it.
This tension, this desperate need to belong spiritually, socially, it all brings us to the most controversial part of his life, his conversion.
Yes. 1897, Gustav Mahler converts to Catholicism.
Now, the cynical take is simple. He wanted the job, director of the Vienna Opera, a position that was closed to Jews. It was a career move.
And, the cynic isn't entirely wrong. The analysis is clear that there was a pragmatic strategy. Anti-Semitism was a glass ceiling, and Mahler wanted to smash through it.
He was ambitious.
He was very ambitious. But Lieberman argues that if you stop there, you miss the whole picture.
Because a man who writes the Resurrection Symphony probably isn't doing things just for a paycheck.
Exactly. Remember the anguished heart. Mahler was drawn to the Christian promise of redemption. He was a man in constant pain. The idea that suffering could lead to salvation, that resonated with him on a deep personal level.
What was Elma's take on it? She was right there watching this unfold.
Her perspective is so revealing. She wrote that Mahler never, ever denied his Jewish origins. In fact, she said he often highlighted them. She called him a Christian believer, a Jewish Christian.
A Jewish Christian. That sounds like someone trying to stand in two worlds at once and maybe belonging to neither.
That's it. And then she compares herself to him. She calls herself a Christian pagan. She noted, maybe a bit bitterly, that she got off easy while he had to bear the consequences of both identities.
An exile in every part of his life.
Yes. And speaking of his heart, we have to talk about the eternal feminine. It's this concept that appears in his later letters to Alma.
It sounds very philosophical. It's from Goethe.
On the end of Goethe's Faust, yes.
Yeah.
And Mahler basically sets up this duality. On one side, you have the eternal masculine.
Okay.
That's the striving, the struggle, the effort of climbing the mountain. That was Mahler's life, conducting, composing, fighting with critics.
And the eternal feminine.
That's the goal. It's the resting place. It's the force of love that pulls you upward without you having to struggle. It's grace being pulled up instead of having to climb.
It sounds like he was just exhausted. He spent his entire life as the eternal masculine, fighting and screaming, and he just wanted peace.
He was looking for a resolution, but, and this is Lieberman's final difficult point,
Yeah.
he never found a complete resolution.
No happy ending then.
Not in that simple sense. For Mahler, every answer was provisional. Every moment of peace was threatened by what he called the cruel mirror of fleetingness. The music tells you this. It builds these huge, perfect cathedrals of sound, and then they just collapse or fade into silence.
So the anguish never left. It just became the fuel for the beauty.
Lieberman says we have to learn to tolerate that. We have to accept the explosive mix of anguish and beauty. They're two sides of the same coin. You can't have the beauty of a Mahler adagio without the scream that came before it.
It really does change how you see him. He's not just some statue in a music hall. He's a man who spent his life banging his fists against the door of the universe.
And that's really the final takeaway here. Behind this towering genius, there was a limitless thirst for meaning. Mahler didn't find the ultimate answer, but he left us the record of his search, and that is his music.
And maybe that's why it still resonates so deeply. Because we're all still searching, we're all trying to make some sense of the silence.
We're all listening to the silence, and sometimes, like Mahler, we try to fill it.
Well, on that note, for our listeners who want to dive even deeper, can you remind us of the book one more time?
Of course. The book is Gustav Mahler, Corazon Angustiado by Arnaldo Lieberman, published by Editora Authentica in 2010. And again, a huge thank you to Professor Reuven Feingold for the foundational analysis that made this all possible.
It sounds like a heavy read, but a rewarding one.
Oh, absolutely. It forces you to listen with new ears. You will not hear these symphonies the same way again.
I think I need to go listen to the Adagio from the 10th Symphony and try to hear that scream you mentioned.
It's in there. Just listen closely.
Thank you very much for being with us. If you liked it, don't forget to register for free on the channel, and from now on, we invite you to follow the next episode.